Good afternoon. Welcome to Wednesdays with Willie. Just kidding, Mark. It is Mondays with Mark on Wednesdays. Just kidding. Hello, Mark Honlock, Director of Horticulture here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. Here to share a couple tips for the late season, the early fall, I guess you'd call it. Well, guess what? It's getting cold. It's going to be really cold Friday night, so we're in the process of removing our annuals. As they like to say, stick a fork in them, they're done. Not quite, but they're getting there. We usually remove our annuals as we're planting our spring blooming bulbs, which we plant in fall, of course. So we have a Spiro here helping us tear out these annuals. They're working on some big cannas you can see there now. And a lot of our cannas are actually started from seed, so we don't need to save them over winter. But if you see back here behind Rachel, we do have some of them, some specialty ones that we still do harvest. You can leave the soil on there like we did. Let them cure for a little bit. They don't take very long to cure. I was looking at the Melinda Myers book, Refreshing My Memory, month by month gardening in Wisconsin, and she said these guys only need to cure for like a day. And then dahlias are another thing we dig out too, and she said, they only need to cure for a couple hours or a day. So we leave them until we have a rain day, and then we start storing them. So you can just store them in peat moss and put them in like a 40 to 55 degree area. So we have some great information on a blog on our website about more in depth for those and other bulbs, tubers, corms, and things like that. So check that out for more tips on ones you would save. But like I said, these guys are all going to get destroyed and composted. And we also have this other bed here that Aspiro is going to be working on. And remember, we talked about again before, a different time, about saving seeds. So we saved some seed from this white cleome here, so that we have that for next year. It'll also seed out when we remove it because it's just so fragile. Those seeds are going to just shatter and scatter. I wanted to tell you one other thing. Another thing we've been doing here is taking our annuals out of our containers. So back here is one of our really nice containers. Maybe Rachel will be able to show it to you. So those containers we always bring into the lower level of the well house to protect them from the elements, not to freeze and thaw over the winter and crack and break. So think about your own containers and what you've done in the past and what you have to do. So those are some of the chores we're starting to do, bring all those guys inside to protect our investment in those pretty expensive pots. There are some other ones like here by the donor gate, which you can kind of see, that do stay out. So it's a balancing act. Some stay out, some come in. The other tip that we're doing here at the Botanical Garden, that you'll probably do, is if you have any water features, it's time to get them ready and winterized. So this fountain here, we have to drain out, we have to cover it up. Sometimes we power wash it this time of the year, sometimes we kind of let it go through the winter and then power wash it. But we're doing that on all our other small water features, turning them off, draining them, pumping them out maybe, bringing the pumps in and storing them correctly. So that's kind of a big project if you have water features to work on. Another thing you can do this time of the year. Well, one other quick random thing with the bed is if you're super ambitious, go through and do another weeding. You can see this oxalis right here has all these seed pods. So, if those guys mature and spread out, boom, all of a sudden you're going to have a giant weed problem next year. So if you want to get ahead of the game, now is the time to do that too. Remember, we talked about don't prune your trees and shrubs this time of the year because it's too late, kind of. I did it though. I did it. One thing I was doing was pruning some off of pathways for our Garden of Lights event. So that might be something as a homeowner that you have where you need to prune it off your sidewalk or something to make it easier for you to shovel or use a snowblower. So that, it's not a thing you're supposed to do, but sometimes you gotta break the rules. Am I right, Rachel?
Yes, Mark.
Other thing, check your local municipality, but oaks are a plant that you can, usually start to prune actually in October-ish. And usually it's through the kind of early part of spring. So this one, I didn't prune, I didn't break the rules. Mother Nature did this, you broke it off with the wind. But this chinkapin oak would be a thing you could start to think about pruning once you check your municipal ordinances, and it's to prevent the spread of oak wilt. One thing that Lindsay, our assistant director of horticulture extraordinaire, thought of was painting a branch of an oak that you see, the tip of it that's dead right now. Right now you can kind of see the ones that are dead still from, the leaves changing color. But when they all lose their leaves, it's pretty hard to tell on an oak what's alive and dead sometimes. So that was a great idea to do this, or to tie, like a fluorescent, colored ribbon on there. This is a bamboo stick, so you wouldn't tie it on there, but a ribbon that's that color so you can tell what's what and prune the right thing when it doesn't have leaves. A good tip there. Remember we talked about fertilizing? We still have a little bit of time. Now's a really good time to fertilize, actually, and use a slow release fertilizer so that when things come around in about 6 months, when it's springtime, that fertilizer will be right there in the root zone. Your grasses will start off greener, get a good jump on the season. And now thinking about grass, you're probably raking leaves or getting ready to start doing it. Got this little letter in the mail from the village of Ashwaubenon that I thought was very informative, to remind us all, about pollution in our lakes and streams and rivers and the bay, and not let all those leaves wash down the storm sewer. So think about how you can, manage your leaves maybe a little bit better. One thing you can do is just mow them in the beginning when there's not that many. Just let them break down and filter in place. Get a mulching blade on your mower to grind them up finer, and just let them filter and have those nutrients brought back into your lawn as another way to fertilize it. Or compost, somebody mentions it here. We have a lot of great resources about composting. So thinking about using those resources of the leaves on your own property and not letting them escape into our water bodies. Another thing to think about this time of the year, maybe we'll talk about it a little more next time, but are all of our perennial gardens here. It's getting close to the time where we have to cut them back for the year, or you can leave them up. We usually cut a fair amount down where we have our spring blooming bulbs for our display, because it's hard for us to do it all in the springtime. But you might want to actually leave it up so that you have habitat. A lot of insects will overwinter as eggs, larvae, pupa, even some overwinter as adults inside the stems of these, inside the leaf litter, inside the mulch, and those kinds of things. It also will have bird seed habitat for other different animals. So it's a balancing act, but something we're really looking into more is leaving more things up to be a better steward of all of the biodiversity here at Green Bay Botanical Garden. Random tip of a thing we did starting the last couple of years is, instead of making one giant pile of debris, we have it spread on like a couple different compost piles on the grounds, and then we even spread all the grand garden debris, because we had to cut it back in the spring for the bulbs, like along the edge of the woods. So instead of one big pile that might get hot and compost and kill things, we kind of tried to spread it out so that all those things maybe would have a better chance of emerging.
So Mark, with cutting back plants and stuff, is it also a good time to still mulch or not?
That is a good question. Yeah, you could still mulch. It's kind of an interesting thing. Like, maybe next time we'll talk about the roses, but for the roses, we actually like it to get cold in the ground to kind of like freeze, and then mulch them to actually like keep it cold so they don't go back and forth. Mm-hmm. So you could still mulch, but that reminded me of something else that I was thinking about, and that was, one back thing about the mulch question is, like, I don't know if I would go hardcore mulching my perennials, because it'll keep the ground warmer and they'll kind of be like, their roots will be growing longer, and I don't know if I really think that's a great idea. I'd kind of wait till spring probably. But the thing that I would do is, if I planted new perennials, trees and shrubs, and especially like any new evergreens, is I'd give them one good watering still. We got some rain on Monday, but I give them a good soak, thorough watering before you'd have to turn off your water system, which you probably will have to do with those cold temperatures we talked about. Especially conifers, it's good to kind of like have them going into the winter with a good watering. But that's a really good question. I really need to think about that more. I would lean toward waiting until spring. Okay. But the other thing I was going to point out to Rachel here is, like perennials, cutting them back off of paths again. We have to do it here because of our Garden of Lights. We really kind of have to clear our pathway, like I talked about the trees and the shrubs. Okay. So those were a few of the tips I wanted to pass on today. Hope you got a little something out of that. Look forward to your fall gardening. Check out our website, gbbg.org, for more tips, and also our Facebook page.